Formula One V10 engine. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Formula One relied on 3.0-liter V10 engines, their development defining the era's technical narrative. The 10-cylinder configuration offered high revs, manageable dimensions, and staggering power outputs. By the early 2000s, engines were producing between 900 and 950 peak horsepower at unprecedented rotational speeds. In 2002, the BMW P82 powering the Williams team became the first F1 engine to break 19,000 revolutions per minute, recording 19.50 revolutions per minute during Austrian Grand Prix qualifying. Ahead of the 2006 season, the FIA announced the end of the Fi-10 era, seeking to contain the astronomical costs of frontier development and keep the sport accessible to manufacturers. Article 5.1 of the 2006 technical regulations mandated naturally aspirated V8 engines capped at 2,400 cubic centimeters. This instantly outlawed V10s, V12s, and larger displacements. Revs were limited to 19,000 revolutions per minute in 2007, dropping to 18,000 revolutions per minute by 2009. There was no gradual phase out. The Formula One 2.4-liter V8 engine, the 2.4-liter V8 that replaced the V10 in 2006 was a temporary formula, though few anticipated the dramatic transition that would follow. Built by Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault, Cosworth, and others, these sophisticated and reliable engines produced roughly 750 to 800 horsepower, revving at the regulated 18,000 revolutions per minute limit. However, their thermal efficiency, the ratio of fuel energy converted into mechanical work, was relatively low compared to modern standards. The FIA ultimately ended the V8 formula to introduce new power units for 2014. Article 5.1 of the 2014 technical regulations mandated a turbocharged 1,600 cubic centimeter V6 integrated with 2 motor generator units to recover kinetic and exhaust heat energy. The naturally aspirated V8 was banned outright from 2014 with no transition period. The entire grid switched to the new hybrid specification simultaneously. The V8 era didn't end because the engines were dominant or dangerous, but because the FIA determined hybrid technology was the relevant direction for road car manufacturers, and Formula One needed to follow suit. The final V8 ran in competition at the 2013 Brazilian Grand Prix. The Toyota Celica GT4 turbocharged engine. Toyota entered the World Rally Championship with the Celica GT4 in the late 1980s, becoming a dominant force in the early 1990s Group A era. The car utilized a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder 3S GTE engine. Under Group A regulations, manufacturers had to use production-derived engines and fit a mandatory intake restrictor, a precisely sized plate that limited airflow to cap power output. This restrictor was Group A's primary performance equalizer required on all competing vehicles. Following the 1995 Rally of Catalonia, scrutiners discovered Toyota's Celica GT4 featured a device that bypassed the mandatory restrictor under specific conditions. When activated, it allowed more air into the engine, producing illegal extra power. As a penalty, the FIA excluded Toyota from the Catalonia results and banned them from the remainder of the 1995 WRC season. Toyota returned in 1996 and continued winning in subsequent years, meaning the ban wasn't permanent. However, the incident demonstrated just how tightly contested the Group A formula had become. The performance edge gained from bypassing the restrictor was deemed worth the massive risk of circumvention. The Nissan RB26D in Australian touring car racing. Nissan designed the R32 Skyline GTR with strict motorsport objectives. The 2.66-liter twin-turbocharged inline-6 RB26DET engine and a Tessa ETS all-wheel drive system were developed specifically to homologate the car for Group A competition hitting Japanese showrooms in 1989. The pairing of the twin-turbo engine and electronic all-wheel drive torque distribution gave the GTR capabilities that conventional rear-wheel drive touring cars simply couldn't match, particularly in the wet or accelerating out of slow corners. Entered under Group A regulations in the Australian Touring Car Championship, the GTR's impact was immediate and absolute. Nissan won the Manufacturers' Championship in 1991 and 1992, with the car winning every single series race it entered. Frustrated rivals in rear-wheel drive machinery formally objected to the governing body. For the 1993 season, the ATCC banned both turbocharged engines and four-wheel drive systems from the main class. Though the rule didn't name the RB26DET specifically, the GTR was immediately rendered ineligible. Nissan withdrew rather than completely rebuild the car's drivetrain. Retiring after 2 undefeated championship years, the GTR remains a textbook example of a car regulated out of a series because the competition couldn't beat it on the track. The Porsche 91730 twin-turbocharged flat 12. In the early 1970s, the SECA's Canadian-American Challenge Cup Can-Am was the most unrestricted major racing series in the world. Operating under Group 7 regulations, it placed almost no limits on engine displacement, power output, or aerodynamics. The intention was to create a spectacular Formula Libre. What it ultimately created was a series that Porsche broke so thoroughly, it stopped being interesting to everyone else. The 91730 was the final evolution of a car Porsche had been developing since the late 1960s. For Can-Am, Porsche took the flat 12 engine that had already won Le Mans in 1970 and 1971 and fitted it with twin turbochargers. The resulting 5.4-liter engine produced approximately 1,100 horsepower in race trim. In qualifying spec, briefly sustaining higher boost pressures, it produced an estimated 1,500 horsepower. Weighing just 820 kilograms, Mark Donoghue drove the Penske Racing entry from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2 seconds into 200 miles per hour in 10.9 seconds. In 1973, the 91730 won 6 of the 8 races, securing the championship with a margin more than double the second-place finisher. Rival teams operating with smaller budgets and less sophisticated machinery had no answer. For 1974, the SECA introduced a minimum fuel consumption rule requiring cars to achieve at least 3 miles per U.S. gallon. At full output, the 91730 Jory's twin-turbo engine consumed approximately 2.2 miles per gallon, sometimes dropping closer to 1 liter per kilometer at maximum power. Meeting the new standard at competitive speeds was impossible without reducing boost until the car's advantage vanished. Porsche and Penske chose not to continue. The 91730 entered just 1 race in 1974 at Mid-Ohio, where Brian Redman carefully managed fuel to finish second before the team withdrew completely. The SECA's unrestricted era effectively died with it, and the series folded after the season. The 91,730 was never banned by name. It was simply regulated out of competitiveness, which amounted to the exact same thing. The 1.5-liter turbocharged Formula One engine. Renault brought the turbocharged engine to Formula One in 1977, sparking an 11-year engineering arms race unlike any the sport had ever seen. The principle was straightforward. By forcing pressurized air into the combustion chamber, a turbocharger allowed an engine to burn more fuel and release significantly more energy than naturally aspirated units of the same displacement. What nobody fully anticipated was just how far well-funded teams would push this principle under regulations with almost no boost restrictions. By the mid-1980s, engines from Honda, BMW, Renault, and Ferrari were stretching the definition of a racing power plant. Honda's RA168E in the 1988 McLaren MP44 produced a managed 685 horsepower at 12,300 revolutions per minute to last a full Grand Prix, but was capable of considerably more in qualifying trim. The BMW M1213, descended from a production 4-cylinder block designed by Paul Rowe, pushed an estimated 1,400 horsepower in short-run qualifying specification. BMW's own dynamometer reportedly couldn't even measure the full output. These peak figures weren't sustained. Engines ran maximum boost for a single time lap before being rebuilt or discarded. But the numbers were real, and the FIA was watching. The governing body began restricting turbo engines in stages, easing manufacturers into a new formula while respecting their heavy investments. In 1987, the FIA capped boost pressure at 4.0 bars and reintroduced naturally aspirated 3.5-liter engines as an alternative. In 1988, the boost limit fell to 2.5 bars, and fuel allocations were cut to 150 liters per race, preventing teams from compensating with more fuel. Even with these constraints, the Honda-powered McLarens of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost won 15 of 16 races that season, leaving the naturally aspirated cars at the back. However, the FIA had already announced in 1986 that turbo engines would be banned entirely by 1989. The phase restrictions were a managed exit, not a genuine attempt to level the field. From 1989 onward, Formula One ran exclusively on naturally aspirated 3.5-liter engines. The turbo era was over, not returning for another 25 years.
So we end this video here. If you have thoughts or suggestions, do share them in the comments. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.